Chapter 46. This venerable one awakens. When Moran came to, he discovered that he was still inside the holy weapon arsenal. It seemed he had been asleep for a long while, but when he opened his eyes, he found that not much time had passed. In fact, everything he had just endured might have passed in the blink of an eye. He didn't know if it was because the spell had been successfully broken, but when he woke, he found he was lying on the ground without a single injury. That savage wound, that blood and gore, they were nothing more than a nightmare. They had left not a trace on his body. Despite himself, Moran was both surprised and delighted. Then he looked over to Shimei. He didn't know when Shimei had lost consciousness, but he was also free from harm. Was it possible that after Shimei passed the exalted Gojin's trial, Gojin had not only broken the illusion, but had healed the wounds that they had received within it? Although, when Moran thought about it, it wasn't like Gojin the Exalted wanted to hurt them, just test them. So this made sense. All the same, it didn't feel real to Moran, and he still felt like he'd barely escaped with his life. Among the four of them, he was the first to wake. The next to rise was Shimei. At the sight of Shimei's lashes slowly fluttering open, Moran was overjoyed. "Shimei!" he exclaimed eagerly. "We're all right, quite all right. Quick, look at me." Within Shimei's gaze there was, at first, a flash of confusion. Then he gradually became more lucid, and his eyes abruptly widened. "Aran, you..." Before he could finish, Moran wrapped him in a tight embrace. Shimei couldn't help but be taken aback, but he gently patted Moran's shoulder and said hesitantly, "What's with you?" "I'm sorry that I made you suffer so." Shimei was perplexed. "Well, it wasn't really anything. I just had a dream, that's all." "But the pain was real," Moran protested. "What pain?" Shimei asked. Just then, Chu Wanning also woke. There was no telling what dreams he'd had, but as he shot up, he yelled, "Insolent ruffian! How dare you feel me up!" At the sight of him rising, Shimei walked over. "Young master." You? Why are you here?" Chu Wanning apparently thought he was still dreaming. Moran was in a great mood, and consequently, his attitude toward Chu Wanning was rather soft. He smiled as he gave an account of the events that had just unfolded. Only then did reality dawn on Chu Wanning. So it was a dream. And here I thought. In order to hide his awkwardness, Chu Wanning cleared his throat. At that moment, he discovered that Chu Wanning, typically the most powerful among them, was still asleep, not yet roused. He was astonished in spite of himself. How come Shizun hasn't woken up? The trio approached to examine Chu Wanning's wounds. Chu Wanning had been injured before the illusion activated, and Gojin the Exalted's trial only healed those injuries suffered within the illusion. Thus, his shoulder was still soaked in a great deal of blood, making it a shocking sight. Moran sighed. "Let's wait a bit longer." It took about half an hour before Chu Wanning finally came to. He slowly opened his phoenix eyes, and when he woke, his gaze was empty and cold, as if veiled by the thick blanket of white left by a heavy snow. It was a long time before his eyes moved, and they fell upon Moran. However, like Chu Wanning, it seemed that for the time being, he hadn't completely freed himself of his dream. Chu Wanning gazed at Moran, then slowly reached out, his voice cracking. "You..." "Shizun," Moran said. Upon hearing Moran call him thus, Chu Wanning's hand paused mid-air. A trace of warmth finally seemed to appear on his pale face, and his eyes also suddenly brightened. "Shizun!" Chu Wanning shoved Moran aside and threw himself at Chu Wanning to clutch his hand. "Are you all right? Are you feeling better? Shizun, it took you so long to wake up. I was going to die from worry." When Chu Wanning saw Chu Wanning, he was slightly bemused. Then the thin layer of fog in his eyes gradually faded. Now that he could take a closer look at Moran, he saw that while Moran was looking back at him, he was holding Chimè's hand tightly. He had never let go, not for a second. The sight gave Chu Wanning pause, and as he more fully woke, his expression cooled. Then, like a fish in a dried-up pond, it utterly died. "Shizun, are you all right?" Chimè asked, concerned. "Does your shoulder hurt?" "I'm fine," Chu Wanning replied tranquilly. "It doesn't hurt." With Chu Wanning's assistance, he slowly stood. Moran was a little puzzled. Chu Wanning had hurt his shoulder, so why was he stepping so gingerly as he rose, like it was his feet that had been injured? Moran, assuming that Chu Wanning didn't know what had happened in the illusion, once again offered a brief account. When Chimè had first heard the tale, he'd thought that something about it wasn't right. Now that he heard it again, he felt even more perplexed. Unable to hold back, he said, "Aran, you said I was the one who saved you?" "Yeah." Chimè was quiet for a moment, then slowly said, "But I was dreaming the whole time. I never woke up." Moran was taken aback, but he immediately laughed. "Stop joking around." "I'm not joking," Chimè said. I dreamed about my mom and dad. They were still alive. The dream was so real, I didn't think I could leave them behind. He didn't finish before Chu Wanning said mildly, "That's not so strange. Gojin probably wiped your memory of rescuing him. Either way, neither myself nor Shu Meng did it, and since he said it was you who did, then it must be so." Chimè fell silent. "Otherwise what? Do you think Gojin has a means by which to swap people's souls?" Chu Wanning asked coldly. Chu Wanning hadn't wanted to suffer all that for nothing, and he had originally intended to tell Moran the truth. He'd furthermore hoped that Moran would realize that the person within the illusion hadn't been Chimè, but Chu Wanning, with whom his heart had been switched. However, when Moran confessed his feelings to Chimè at the end, it had become too embarrassing for Chu Wanning to bear. When Chu Wanning woke, he had gazed into Moran's bright black eyes. For a moment, Chu Wanning had thought that perhaps, deep in his heart, Moran did care for him, even just a little. It was such a modest and unassuming hope, a vulnerable thought that only dared to surface quietly and after a long, long stretch of time. As it turned out, it had all been in his head. The blood Chu Wanning had bled, the injuries he'd suffered, Moran knew nothing of them, and neither was there a need for him to know. Chu Wanning wasn't stupid. Even if Moran didn't say anything, it was easy to see just how much he treasured the gentle and beautiful person beside him. Why would Moran ever turn his gaze toward Chu Wanning, who stood in the corner like a puppet covered in dust? Yet, even when he'd heard those words, "I've always liked you," pass Moran's lips, Chu Wanning had still felt like he'd conclusively lost, that he had suffered an unmistakable, miserable defeat. To Moran, that embrace within an illusion had been charity that Chimè bestowed upon him. Moran would never ever know that this embrace had instead been charity that he bestowed upon another pitiful soul. Chu Wanning had never believed that Moran would ever like him in that way, so he had done his best to suppress his own feelings. He never acted on them, never disturbed them, never went near them. Reckless affection and passionate, obsessive entanglements, these things only grew in the soil of youth. When Chu Wanning was young, he'd also hoped there might be someone who would stay by his side, with whom he might share wine beneath the moon, but he'd waited, and still this person had never arrived. Later, as time passed, day by day, his reputation within the cultivation world had climbed higher and higher, and everyone had placed him on a pedestal. While they greatly admired him, they'd kept their distance and called him cold-hearted. Eventually, he'd come to accept the pedestal as well as the cold heart. It was as if he was hiding in a cocoon and time was continuously spinning silk around him. At first, he had still seen some light from the outside seeping through the walls, but year after year there was more and more silk, and the cocoon grew thicker and thicker, so much so that he could no longer see the light. Within the cocoon there was only himself and the darkness. Chu Wanning didn't believe in love, nor in chance encounters, and he certainly didn't want to go chasing after any such thing. If he were to arduously gnaw through the cocoon, getting cut and scraped all over in the process, and come crawling clumsily out only to find no one waiting for him on the other side, what would he do? Perhaps he did like Moran, but this boy was too young, too far out of reach, and too fiery. Chu Wanning didn't want to get close, lest one day that flame burn him to ashes. Thus, any time he could take a step back, he did. He didn't know where he had gone wrong. What had he done for even such a small daydream to be drowned by storming frigid rain? "Shizun, look over there, quick!" Chu Wanning's sudden startled cry brought Chu Wanning's mind back to the present, and his gaze followed the call only to see that roaring molten metal was again rolling in the crucible. The ancient tree spirit broke through the waters once more, wreathed with flames. However, the tree spirit's eyes were rolled back. It was obviously not in its right mind. In its hands, it held that shimmering silver sword, the sacred blade of Gochin the Exalted. "Run, quickly!" Chu Wanning barked. There was no need to repeat himself. His disciples dashed toward the exit. The controlled tree spirit raised its head toward the sky and shrieked. The iron chains that hung across his body rattled violently, clinking and clanking. No one had spoken, but all four of them simultaneously heard a voice in their ears. "Stop them! Not a single one shall escape!" "Someone's talking in my head!" Chu Wanning cried out in dismay. "Don't pay him any mind," Chu Wanning said. "It's the Heart Pluck Willow's technique, temptation of the heart. Just focus on escaping." Now that he said it, the rest remembered. The Heart Pluck Willow had warned them while he retained consciousness. Temptation of the heart used the greed and desire in people's hearts as bait to compel them to slaughter one another. Sure enough, the voice in Chu Wanning's ears hissed. "Chu Wanning, aren't you tired? Esteemed Zongshe, Yuheng of the night sky, such a distinguished individual, yet you're reduced to pining for your own disciple in secret. You have given him much, and he's taken it all for granted. He never had eyes for you. He only likes the gentle and beautiful little Shige. How pitiful." Chu Wanning's face turned ashen. He furiously ignored the noise in his ears and continued to run for the exit. "Come to my side and take up this ancestral sword. Then kill Shimei, and no one will stand between you. Come to my side. I can help you achieve your wish for your beloved to love only you. Come to my side." "What a reprobate. Get the hell out," Chu Wanning snarled angrily. The disciples were obviously also hearing the various enticements that voice proposed. While their pace slowed, they fought the temptation. The closer they got to the exit, the more the Heart Pluck Willow seemed to thrash in his madness. The hissing howls in their ears became practically gnarled. "Think it through. Once you're past the door, you'll never get another chance." The voices within their ears differed, but all shrieked sharply. Chu Wanning, do you truly wish to be alone for the rest of your days? More way you. I'm the only person in this world who knows where to find the resurrection pill. Come to me, let me tell you. Shi Mingjing, I know the desire that lies in the deepest recesses of your heart. Only I can help you. Shu Ziming, the holy weapon you chose was a counterfeit. There is only one weapon left in the Jinchen Lake that was forged by Gochin the Exalted.
Return and it's yours. Don't you desire a magnificent holy weapon? Don't you wish to be the darling of the heavens? Without a holy weapon, you'll never measure up to the rest. Come to me.
Chu Wanning! Moran suddenly realized that his cousin, who had been running by his side, had disappeared. He whipped his head around, only to see Chu Wanning's steps slowing until, eventually, they came to a stop. Chu Wanning was looking back to gaze at that silvery blue sacred sword, floating up and down in the crucible. Moran's heart lurched. He knew how Chu Wanning obsessed over holy weapons. When the kid first realized that the weapon he'd received was a forgery, he must have been crushed. The Heart Pluck willow really knew how to hit below the belt, tempting him with the ancestral sword. Chu Wanning, don't believe him! Don't go! Young master, let's go! Shimei chimed in. We're almost at the exit. Looking lost, Chu Wanning turned his head back and glanced at them. All the while, the voice echoing in his head grew even more hypnotizing.
They're jealous of you. They don't want you to have a holy weapon. Think about Yu. He's already won his weapon, so of course he'd rather you have nothing. You two are brothers, but if you fail to be his better, then the position of honored leader of Xixing Peak will naturally fall to him.
Shut up, Chu Wanning muttered. In front of him, Moran seemed to be anxiously yelling something, but he couldn't hear anything distinctly. He could only hug his head and cry out repeatedly, You shut your mouth! Shut up!
Chu Wanning, no weapons suitable for you remain in the holy weapon arsenal. If you give up the essential sword, in the future, you will have no choice but to submit yourself in servitude to Yu. When that time comes, he will be your master. You will be obliged to kneel before him, to obey his every command. Just think, if you kill him, none of that will come to pass. Fratricide has recurred time and time again throughout history, and he is only your cousin. Why should you hesitate? Come, allow me to give you the sword.
Chu Wanning! Young master! Chu Wanning suddenly ceased his struggling, and his eyes shot open, his pupils red.
Come to my side. You are the darling of the heavens. You are worthy to lead an army of millions.
Chu Wanning! Chu Wanning shouted sharply.
Come here. Only when you have become the leader of Xixing Peak will the lower cultivation world know peace. Think of those who suffer. Think of the injustices you have all suffered. Chu Wanning, let me help you.
Unwittingly, Chu Wanning had already approached the bubbling crucible. The spirit of the Heart Pluck willow presented him with the ancestral sword of Gojin the Exalted. Bloody veins crawled across the whites of its rolled eyes.
Very good. Take the sword and go. Stop them.
Chu Wanning slowly raised his trembling hand and took that silvery blue sacred blade.
Kill them. Kill Yu. Quickly. Ah!
Chu Wanning abruptly unsheathed the long sword, the weapon a splendid steel blossom in his hand. Then he swung, striking swiftly with a backhand swing. The handsome visage of the darling of the heavens was brilliantly reflected in the spiritual aura of the ancestral sword. Illuminated by the shine of the blade, his eyes were clearer and brighter than ever before, and not the least bit drunk on bloodlust. The strike was directed not at Moran. Rather, Chu Wanning lunged straight for the body of the Heart Pluck willow and pierced through its abdomen. Instantly, the earth juddered, and the ancient willow shook. The spell was broken, and the interior of the holy weapon arsenal began to crack and collapse. Chu Wanning panted harshly. He had used everything he had to break free from the enchantment. He glared at the Heart Pluck willow, his young face filled with youthful innocence and determination. In those shining eyes gleamed both naivety and pride. There was more to the son of the phoenix than mere martial prowess, after all.
"Don't you bewitch me, and don't even think about harming anyone else," Chu Wanning gasped as he finished and swiftly wrenched out the long sword.
The astringent stench of blood erupted from the Heart Pluck willow. As he slumped over in his dying moments, his consciousness returned to his body, and the resentful energy within him was thoroughly dispersed. The Heart Pluck willow clutched his chest and arduously steadied his drooping body as he lifted his face. He opened, then closed his mouth, and while no voice escaped him, the movement of his lips was easily interpreted.
"Thank you for stopping me."
The Heart Pluck willow's original body was a spirit of ancient times, equal in power to the ancestral sword. Pitted against each other, both sword and spirit had been damaged irrevocably. The spiritual aura of the ancestral sword in Chu Wanning's hand dimmed and wilted. All at once, the form of this millennia-old tree spirit dissipated. In an instant, millions of sparkles scattered into the crucible. They danced and circled overhead like flowing and fluttering fireflies, their golden shimmer bright, until finally they faded one by one, never to be seen again.
"Young master, come here, quickly!" Shimei called. "The arsenal is going to collapse."
The earth was still shaking. They couldn't stay for long. Chu Wanning looked back and gave the holy weapon arsenal a final glance. Then he threw aside the destroyed ancestral sword with a clang and left. Behind him, bricks and shingles cascaded down like a crashing avalanche.